Hi guys, this is day 12 of the 42-day revision challenge, and today we are doing minimum price. Government puts a minimum price when they feel that the price of a good is too low. It is a form of price control, which is where now we're looking at the benefits of producers, where we feel that the price is so low that the poor producer may not be able to stay in the market. So a price that is too low results in what we call a minimum price, which is put above the equilibrium price, and the sole purpose of a minimum price is to benefit the low income producers who may not be able to benefit from the low equilibrium price. So why does the equilibrium price become so low? And the answer is, well, it could be the demand and supply factors. Maybe sometimes, like where there's agriculture, there could be a very good crop and the supply could go up so much that the price becomes so low, making it not worthwhile for producers to actually become profitable or be attracted to the industry. So whenever the minimum price is put, the idea is this: the government is trying to sort of protect the producer. Another name for minimum price is what we call sometimes a price floor. So a maximum price is called a price ceiling, but a minimum price is called a price floor. So let's see this in terms of a diagram as to how minimum price works, and what are the possible issues that can come about because of minimum price. So let's say this is demand and supply of an agricultural good, and right now the price is P naught. If the government feels that this price P naught is too low, the government can put a minimum price, and that price is put above equilibrium. So minimum price is put above equilibrium. Let's call this price to be P min, and this supply curve to be a minimum price. So when you put a minimum price above equilibrium, the first thing we can notice is that the quantity supplied will go up, because the higher price will encourage more producers to produce more, so quantity supplied will go to Q2. At the same time, some consumers will be discouraged of buying the good because the price is higher than the equilibrium price, and therefore some consumers will be discouraged to produce, and the quantity goes to Q naught. So ultimately, when you look at a minimum price effect in terms of demand and supply, we can say this: the minimum price, although results in the price to go up for producers, but it also results in what we call a surplus, which means unsold stocks will be lying with the producers as the price has gone up. Some consumers are not buying the good, and more producers are producing the good. So when we look at welfare of producers and consumers, let's look at consumer surplus and producer surplus to understand how producers and consumers are doing before and after minimum price. Let's do one thing. Let's call these regions 1, 2, and 3, and this as 4, 5, and 6. So trying to be consistent with our sort of older convention of consumer surplus and producer surplus. So before minimum price, your consumer surplus was 1 plus 2 plus 3, which is area under the demand curve above the market price, while producer surplus was 4 plus 5 plus 6, which is area above the supply curve below the market price. So this triangle will be 4, 5, and 6, right? And the quantity sold is of course Q naught, and the price is P naught. So let me also write that. So P naught, comma Q naught. Now after minimum price, we know the price is P min, and we know the quantity that is being sold is Q1. So let me call this Q1. So after minimum price, consumer surplus will be what? And the answer is this: that Q1 is the quantity sold, P min is the price, area under the demand curve above the market price, consumer surplus will be area 1. Producer surplus, on the other hand, will be for these Q1 producers who are now selling the good. This is what the price is. So this means area 2, 5, and 6 is all the producer surplus they are pocketing, because area under the P-min price above the supply curve is area 2 plus 5 plus 6. So 2 plus 5 plus 6 is basically the gain in producer surplus. So what we notice here is just that as compared to previously, of course, consumers are worse off, because consumer surplus has gone from 1 plus 2 plus 3 to only area 1. So consumers, let me write this, consumers are definitely worse off. But what about producers? Well, look at this. Producers are getting 4 plus 5 plus 6, and now they're getting 2 plus 5 plus 6, which means 5 and 6 are common. They lose area 4, but they gain area 2. So in other words, they lose area 4. Let me shade area 4. And they gain area 2. One could say this, that producers, are they better off or not? And the answer is that producers will be better off if area 2 is greater than area 4. If area 2 is greater than area 4, one could argue that what producers gain in terms of prices, higher prices, they will be sort of better off than what they lose in terms of quantity. So if the price is rising by much more than the fall in quantity, one could argue that the producers will gain much more. In other words, if the good is inelastic, then the price will rise by much more due to a change in price, and that could result in producers to gain more in terms of after minimum price than before minimum price. So producers, are they better off? And the answer is only if area 2 is greater than area 4. But what if government decides to buy surplus? If the government decides to buy surplus, that would be good news for producers, because then their producer surplus will be much more. But in case when the government is not buying any production, one could argue that if Q1 is the only quantity sold, then you will see producers to benefit only if area 2 is greater than area 4. If the government decides to buy the surplus, that's another story. So let's look at the problems of minimum price. The first problem of minimum price that we would like to discuss is that it results in what we call a surplus. So if you look at this, the diagram, Q2 minus Q1 is the total amount of surplus that happens because the price is now P-min. If the government decides to buy the surplus, that's good news for producers, because now producers' total income will be P-min times Q2. So producers will get P-min times Q1 from the consumers, while P-min times Q2 minus Q1 will be coming from what we call the government. So total producers' income will go up by Q2 minus Q1 times P-min. So that's great news for producers, because that means that the whole surplus will be bought. What can the government do with that? Well, the government could store this surplus, could destroy it, or sell it abroad in other markets. That's few options the government could have. Like, for example, if they can't store it, they may sell it abroad. If they can't sell it abroad, they may end up even sometimes destroying the surplus. But when the government decides to buy the surplus, the producer's income will go up, which will be good news for producers. The problem of buying the surplus, however, will be that government has to pay the money for it, which means that government expenditure may increase, and this rise in expenditure means that the government may either have to tax more, so tax burden will rise on taxpayers because the government has a scheme to pay for, or the government may cut down expenditure elsewhere, which means some other goods will suffer. So there is an opportunity cost attached with this expenditure. Also, when the government is giving this kind of an income to farmers, there could be a possibility of inefficiency to go up. So inefficiency may rise when it comes to farmers, because now they have to they get a guaranteed kind of an income without doing much, so they may become too complacent because of this.